Hello and welcome everyone. I am Rizwan Malik. I am thrilled to welcome you to a webinar, How Senior Finance Leaders Can Harness the Human Side of Digital Transformation. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, there are multiple application widgets that you can use. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to make sure your desktop looks the way you would like. Also, please note that the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click on Enlarge Slides button. That's located in the top right corner of your presentation window. If you need any technical assistance, click on the Help widget, and that's located at the bottom left corner of your console. And also, we encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation. Use the Q&A widget, and that's at the bottom of your console. We will try to answer all those questions during this webcast. But if for some reason we run out of time or if a more in-depth response is required, we will answer them via email. Please do know that all those questions are captured, and we've reserved about 10 minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A, and we will also answer those questions that you have submitted. Just as a reminder, you'll also be able to access the on-demand recording of the webinar using the same link that you received today, okay? So with that, let's introduce our speakers for today. With us, we have Yoana Land. She is the Chief Financial Officer for Transformation for North America at L'Oreal. And we also have Philip Peck, who's the VP of Advisory Services and Finance Transformation Practice at Peloton. So with that, if I may, Yoana, could you please introduce yourself and provide us your background, and I will ask Philip to do the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here today and to spend probably the next 1 hour together. As for my background, you probably hear an accent. I'm originally from Eastern Europe. I came to the US following the American dream when, I was a teenager, and I can say I found it based on where I am today and also personal satisfaction, right? I started my career in IT, so I'm not your typical CFO. I have an IT background, so this topic, it's, very relevant to me and close to my heart. I spent 5 years in IT at PepsiCo. Then I moved into consulting. I navigated several, master's degrees, and I worked across the whole spectrum of finance, anything from research, innovation, operations, FP&A, division CFO, zone CFO. My recent placement was in North Asia, in China. A lot about digitalization to touch on when it comes to China. So currently I'm in a role called CFO of Transformation for North America at L'Oreal. And my role gives me, a complete company view of all the efforts that are going on, and allows me to work with the business to maximize, the return on investment of these efforts, and a lot to talk about there when it comes to technology as well.
Thank you, Yoana. And Philip.
Thank you. I'm Philip Peck, Vice President of Advisory Services and Finance Transformation at Peloton Consulting Group. I have an accent as well, a Chicago accent. I live in downtown Chicago. So Yoana, we'll tag team back and forth here. I've spent my entire career, 35 plus years, in the finance and FP&A space. Started, working up the ranks in a number of different roles in the Chicagoland area for different organizations. Eventually, I became a business controller. I've run FP&A functions. I did merger and acquisition work, did some very interesting dynamic simulation modeling work way back in the day in telecommunications, then took a turn in my career into consulting. Given my DNA, which is really business process centric, I have been helping organizations embrace, adapt, configure leading practices from planning, forecasting, strategy management, resource allocation, management reporting and analytics, how you improve overall decision-making for organizations, always with an eye towards enabling tools and technologies. So now what we do at Peloton Consulting Group is help organizations drive digital transformation efforts, from the envisioning, from the implementation, and then the care and feeding of those solutions over time. really looking forward to this discussion, as I think the topic is very relevant, very timely, and really important for the Office of Finance and for organizations overall.
Thank you, Philip. And again, my name is Rizwan Malik. I head value engineering at TradeShift. So I think this is going to be a great discussion. It's very relevant for the times today. And so let's get started here. Just kind of a little preamble of the panel and our discussion today. So I think as we dive into this, I really think that, I think we'd all agree that digital transformation is still kind of in its infancy. And a lot of organizations, have already embraced the whole automation concept, right? We had to. We were in the pandemic, right, for the last 3 years, and we're still coming out of it. And I think because of that automation, we removed a lot of inefficiencies, right? And we generated a lot of cost savings. So some of the basic things that we had to do. However, although, automation can generate many benefits, it can only do so much, right? I think the next iteration, what TradeShift really believes is that the next iteration of digital transformation really focusing on value creation. And that's allowing CFOs to reimagine how the finance department really operates. And it's really about the people, And in order to unleash that power of technology, it really requires ingenuity, it requires a lot of creativity, and it requires those highly trained employees. So for the finance to really push those traditional boundaries, which we've already kind of harnessed in on, which are, hey, let's get this organization much more efficient. Let's generate those savings. What can finance departments do that are not so traditional, right? That where they can actually unlock the value for those next generation of finance teams. So nonetheless, by focusing on technology adoption, which I think a lot of companies had to do, some businesses did overlook, what is it about the workforce? We've got great technology, we've got some adoption, but I think we're still missing that piece where, what about our people, right? So I think we're kind of like standing at that cusp of digital transformation where I think organizations are really trying to understand, hey, how do I attract the right talent? How do I train that talent? And how do I retain those employees that can help me conquer and move forward in this digital transformation? So during this webinar, we're going to navigate through what senior professionals really think. How do they reimagine the finance department functions? And we will frame this discussion around the central tension point brought out by some research that TradeShift and CFO Dive did with CFOs, vice presidents of finance, and chief accounting officers, amongst other finance leaders. So let's dive in a little bit. So one of the things that I think that, is really important to highlight here is, you can see from our recent survey here in findings, CFOs face a lot of different responsibilities. They are expanding their array of responsibilities, a lot of competing priorities from technology to talent, and it's also from compliance to supply chain risk, right? So my question to I guess, Yoana first, please. Let's talk a little bit about what you've seen in your role, what you've seen in your department, how your department has evolved in the last few years, and what have been some of those main catalysts for change?
Yeah, this is a great question. Actually, I did a presentation a few years ago about how the role of the CFO has changed over the years. And if you allow me, I will go back a little bit in time just to kind of bring the audience along. So if we just start around the 1980s, I think it's a good time to look at what the CFO was doing. And at that time, it was very tactical in nature. You think about, the large companies, they had mostly as technology, the mainframe computer, and, everything was, very task oriented. So the CFO was doing budgeting, planning, forecasting, and, control of resources across the company. However, by the 1990s, we see the role of the CFO becoming much more strategic in nature. And this is driven by the emergence of the internet. But also, if you remember, that's the time when the mainframe was replaced by what we know today as the Windows computers. So with this, the role of the CFO it's much more strategic and much more focusing, on driving value through bringing consulting in or even outsourcing, outside the U.S. However, by the 2000s, the collapse of Enron brings a strong emphasis on financial control, and we see the role of the CFO tilting back again towards more tactical activities. However, today, I don't think we have a choice, and I think you pointed out very well the fact that the pandemic made the technology to be much more digital and the sales and the business to function much more into a digital world. And I read, that in the US, people purchase right now about 50% online. And I can tell you in China, 75% of the purchases were online. So we are going towards that digitalization that you referenced to. So what does that mean? What are some of the changes that brings into the CFO department? And I think there are about 6 things that, kind of levers that we have to master going forward that are positive, but there is also a negative one. So right now there's a lot going on, on the social media, mobile technology, and I kind of talked about how the mobile technology changed the way we do business, but then the emergence of the social media accounts as well as search optimization tools created this intense data availability. So the question is, what does the CFO does with all this data? So the good part is that there's a lot of technology that emerged, like the cloud, that allowed for this data to be stored, to be cleansed, to be queried through artificial intelligence and BI tools, and we got to a point that we call democratization of data. So what does that mean? That means that we, from a finance department, try to get this data as clean and as clear as possible in order to be able to query and produce, timely reports and insights that the decision could take into account when calling out what to do next. And I think also processes. There's a lot of change that we see in processes, machine learning, automatization of manual, repeatable work, brought about, a lot of improvement in the way finance department works and, our efficiencies into day-to-day activities. However, there's a negative one that we have to manage that I mentioned earlier, and this is the cybersecurity. A lot of data availability, a lot of the business moving into the digital creates, openings into the systems that probably are not ready yet, for all this sophistication that we see nowadays into the cyber attacks. And there is one study that said that today 5 out of 6 large U.S. companies are targeted by cyber criminals, and this is about 40% improvement versus last year. So a lot more to look into here.
Yeah, and I've also read that majority of those cybersecurity attacks are on the finance department. So, they're getting hit really hard. So, and it's usually done via email. So thank you for that insight. And Philip, same question to you. What have you seen in your organization? What are the things that you're experiencing at Peloton?
A great question. And Yoana, you did a phenomenal job of establishing the backdrop. You hit upon so many themes there. What I'll try to do is add some complementary perspectives as of what we've seen at Peloton Consulting Group, working with clients, all shapes and sizes, all different industries. I think I'll start first with that theme that you really highlighted well, Yoana, that movement from kind of the manual to automation in freeing up time for us in our various different finance roles, really to become more indispensable business partners. And how did that happen? In large part, those technology deployments, along with process improvements, enables the streamlining and automation of things that were typically highly manual, people dependent, intensive, and in large part, they would be Excel-driven processes. These span really all activities under the umbrella of finance, be it accounting, finance, FP&A, and even broader, even operationally through the value chain of an organization. A good example here that I always like to use is financial and management reporting. Lacking robust tools, technology, access to data and information, and well-designed processes, reporting in many organizations was, and in certain cases today, still a Herculean effort where the associates spend significant time collecting, scrubbing, transforming, reconciling data, then creating, formatting, checking, and distributing reports. With technology automation, with better tools, with better processes, that can be automated, streamlined, and really shift that pendulum where people spend their times and efforts. So finance practitioners, freed from the lower value manually intensive activities, they can focus on the secret sauce, the value-added activities, analyzing business performance, developing data-driven insights. You brought up the democratization of data, that whole self-service theme where we as practitioners are developing the insights. We have the data information at our fingertips. We're not beholden to the IT organization to query, reflect, where we can then, in a much more facile, accelerated way, provide recommendations to employees. That whole concept of indispensable business partners is a huge shift in the role of finance, in the role of FP&A, in the role of what we do. So we're much more at the front of the bus, if you will, driving the organization, strategy development, strategic options, participate in initiative development and execution, raising the finance aptitude across the organization. So at the end of the day, we're helping to enable better decision-making. One quick call out, I think you touched more later during this webinar. Adapting to this new environment will require significant learning and embracing new digital-centric skills, development of, I like essential versus softer, but a whole array of different skills that traditionally that wasn't in the DNA of the finance practitioners necessarily looking for that or as part of the kind of overall career management program.
Thank you, Philip. Yes, so it sounds like there's a lot of data at your fingertips, and you have all this fantastic data and the visibility of that data. And what do you do with that data? Seems like a common theme. You've improved on processes. You've become a little bit more independent from the IT organization. Now, what do you do with that data? And I think that's very key. And once you have those insights, that allows your teams to really focus on those strategic activities versus those tactical activities. So that really leads me to my next question here. Now, let's talk a little bit about this first data point and how bringing data into one place and getting a single view is a major hurdle for a lot of the respondents in this survey. And they're still trying to overcome this. And then looking at our second data point, integrating technology with your existing ERP systems, right, is certainly still another major hurdle. And then finally, getting the people to understand it, to accept it, and use the technology is probably the next step. So finance leaders seem to be prioritizing the technology investment and then take them beyond those basic things such as, efficiencies and cost savings, and then moving into this whole strategic value creation. So my question would be, how significant is that leap for your organizations and your teams? And what are the biggest obstacles you're trying to overcome in those areas? And I'll have Philip answer first, please.
Really important question here. And that the leap, sometimes many of us like to use the chasm, or for those, I'll show my age just a bit. There used to be a motorcycle stunt person, Evel Knievel. He would jump across canyons and things. Depending on the organization, that chasm can be very, very significant, very large, and at times often insurmountable. Some organizations almost freeze. They look at all these aspects and the challenge and they just don't know what to do. So I like to use this term, and certainly CFOs who are on the leading edge embrace it. The mantra of the art of the possible. For many organizations, that mind shift required to embrace, adapt, adopt, and optimize capabilities available in this new landscape, technology, new processes, methodologies, frameworks, it can be a 180-degree directional shift. As opposed to feeling threatened, we strongly embrace that finance associates and the CFO, they need direction and guidance to enable the forward-looking thinking required of the technology-enabled digital transformation. This often begins with a very clear, explicit, what's in it for me use case based on the day in the life of activities before and the implementation of a new technology solution. You can make it very tactical and very pragmatic. So something like your end-to-end procure-to-pay process. In many organizations, it's highly manual, it's Excel dependent, there's multiple handoffs, it happens in a silo. But helping people appreciate there's a vastly better way through automation, through tools, through process improvement, it's back to the art of the possible, and then helping the organization embrace when you reach that better future state or end state, the value proposition associated with that. Successfully performing work responsibilities and delivering the promise of advanced business partnering, the associates themselves must develop these new digitally oriented skills to the new technologies. And I referenced this earlier as well, the essential skills, the softer skills to satisfy that business partnering. And that obstacle, this is not easy. For many associates and many people who've been in their jobs for a while, their role is now fundamentally changing. They need to embrace elements like communication, intellectual curiosity, empathy, the ability to do storytelling, facilitation, negotiation, being able to work with others and come to a common ground, be in their shoes, if you will, and help together to drive better decision-making, exploring different projects, possibilities, ripping apart problems. But all of that are not necessarily skills that people had in the past or they nurtured. You need to have both an aptitude and an attitude to be able to embrace that change and overcome some of those obstacles so you can drive the digital transformation. Through the lens of the functions within finance, these, like I was alluding to, the roles and responsibilities have changed. Automation of the tasks has eliminated the manual activities and shifted the focus of the finance teams. So you now need to structure things while you're still delivering the foundational work outputs. The things that we need to do still don't change. If I'm in the FP&A group, we still typically need to produce an annual plan. We have quarterly reporting. We do variance analysis. You orchestrate the budget process and so forth. But increasingly, we've shifted away from those things that now you could call lower value added, and or technology just helps us accelerate getting them done such that we free up time. Say 80% of our time is now focused on the value added activities. So that is a huge paradigm shift for many organizations where certain associates are left hanging there going, I'm not sure what to do. I don't fully understand the landscape that I'm now in. And that's where that critical role of management, articulating the vision, and helping every single individual on that journey as you're embracing the value prop and value creation associated with digital transformation.
Fantastic. And over to you, Yoana. Same question. How significant is this leap for L'Oreal? What are the obstacles that you are trying to overcome?
Yes, actually, the answer was so complex and already so many details. So I'm just going to try to add a few points. For me, this acceleration of digital, it's here to stay. So what I actually read, which was super interesting, was that 70% of the CFOs, they said that they will increase and maintain their investment in digital through 2023 even if the inflation persists. So this reinforces, the fact that we are in this complete change. We have to make the leap, to jump over, and we have to make it successfully. So at the end of the day, how do we do that? What are the biggest obstacles? So one thing that I noticed in my career, and that's also because I have the IT background, was that you bring very complex technology, some new, some very old, right? So that technology in itself, those ecosystem of tools, right, is not working properly. And you have very specialized IT departments that try to maintain it, to enhance it. And then on the other side, you have finance. And finance is becoming more and more responsible of the data analysis, data cleansing, data merging, through different systems, reporting. And many times you see that the finance department gets stuck, or it spends too much time on manual work of cleansing this data, of trying to connect the dots and trying to make sense of it. While at the same time, IT is dealing with all these IT issues, and trying to connect systems together. So what I thought would be very interesting if Department of Finance has IT embedded in it. And that goes back to my background, right? I understand IT. So many times I can offer that, immediate solution or immediate answer to my team just because I have an IT background. So the idea is, how do you do that, right? Do you take a technology person and teach them finance, or do you take a finance person and teach them IT? And this has been one of my probably year-long quest for answers. And I don't think I have an exact answer. But what I can tell you is what I think it's easier. It's easier, in my opinion, to take a technology person and put them in finance and have the finance team spend time with this person and kind of teach them what's important to finance. What do we do? Why do we do it? How do we add value? And, the importance of really understanding the technology behind what we try to do. And I did that. So in my team, I brought someone with an IT background, and we took about 3 months to have this person come up to speed on what we do and understand finance and, our cadence, right, of monthly closing the books, reporting immediately, making sure the reports are correct, and then immediately going to preparing the next month, the next trend, the next quarter, and so on. So that for me worked. And when you ask what can we do, how to become successful, and what does it take to do that? So I think today the finance, if you take just a finance professional, knowing accounting and understanding finance is not enough. More and more they need to have digital and technology knowledge. And how do you do that? Where there's opportunities, like I sat for 1 year as CFO of digital for L'Oreal USA. So that allowed me to develop, even though I have a technology background, but to learn more about digital. You can be a CFO or a finance professional for the technology department, to try to get closer to the technology and to systems and processes. So I think there's a lot of ways to kind of cross-pollinate the functions, and I'm talking 3 functions here. I think of, IT, technology is one function, the other one is finance, and the third one is digital with data, and everything that it takes to digitalize the function. So what it takes to cross-pollinate all this, I think it takes, someone that is open to change and very adaptable to change. And this talks not only about CFOs or finance professionals. I think change is part of the day-to-day. And later in our questions, we'll probably come back to change, because I think it's such an important part of our discussion. But pretty much embracing change is one of the most important things that you're looking for into the finance professionals. Of course, I talked about being able to learn, to quickly grasp new tools, new skills. Also being able to really look beyond the data. And I think the finance department is very good at that, because FP&A function, that's what they do. They don't look only at accounting and what historically has happened and why it has happened, but also what the data I have available today and what assumptions I make into the data in order to project the future. And that really gives you a good understanding of what data means and how we use data. And lastly, I would say communication. Communication is important not only to communicate the results and the reports and the financial analytics, but also to be able to communicate to the IT department, digital, to the stakeholders, about what we do, what's important, how we do it, our cadence, our processes, so that we can blend seamlessly different functions in the organization in order to be able to meet our reporting calendars and be able to meet the business needs in a very, rapid fashion. I was going to say hour by hour fashion because we make decisions so fast, but let's just stay with rapid. I think it's better.
Yeah, no, it seems like roles are cross-pollinating, as you mentioned. The roles are becoming more dynamic. You have to know a lot more about different processes, right? And then the human factor of what's that change mean to me as an individual. So a lot of different things to consider as we move into this digital world. So moving on to the next area. Now, it's not only about technology investment, right? We mentioned that there's a lot of companies that made technology investments and they plan on doing so in the coming years. We have the human factor that's looming on our minds as leaders. So to Yoana, how do you go about creating a culture that really embraces that technology, but also kind of values the unique contribution of its people? What does that success look like in terms of a good blend between technology and human capital, human talent?
Mm-hmm. I touched a little bit on this before, and I kind of want to come back to it. I don't think the culture is a culture that embraces technology. I think we need to create a culture that embraces change. And let me repeat that. I don't think it's about, a culture that embraces technology. It's a culture that embraces change. Because change is the only thing that's constant. Today we talk about technology, but tomorrow, what will it happen where we have to adapt to the new wave, right? So that's why for me, change is much better word associated with culture than anything else. So when it comes to that, what we need to do to embrace change, right? It's to go with it, to welcome it in our life. It happens no matter what. Our day today is not the same as our day yesterday, right? So change will come no matter what. The question is, how do we funnel, all our energy into riding the momentum that comes with change, such as coming back to, the pandemic was such a huge change for our lives. The companies that were successful immediately saw that there's opportunity behind this. And I'm not talking in a negative way. Opportunities such as I should immediately start developing my digital. I should try to collect more data about what's going on online because right now everyone is forced to go online, right? So that kind of change that I'm talking about, and embracing those kind of pivotal moments in life, or in our economy, in our decade, where, in order to be successful, you have to ride the change. You have to ride the momentum of the change and put all your energy in moving forward. Change is not easy. Change is something that nobody knows what brings, right? So it's not today. It's not what I know from yesterday, but it is what is that I have to do today to be ready for tomorrow. So that's why I say in my to everyone that changes. That's why it's difficult, right? Because it's unknown, and it's connecting the dots. And I think the mindset of the organization mostly is what I've been doing till now works, and if it's not broken, I should not try to fix it. However, I think that what worked till today was about yesterday's environment and today, but our work into tomorrow would be again adapting to change. So this is one part that is sometimes forgotten in the equation.
Thank you, Yoana. Yeah, absolutely. And Philip, same question to you. So how do you embrace technology and create a culture that brings the contribution of its people as well?
Thank you. I loved, Yoana, your perspective on flipping the dynamic and taking a slightly different lens, less of the technology with a capital T and more of a change with a capital C. Certainly in the work that we do with clients driving digital transformation efforts, they can be very large programs. And you're embarking, say, replacing an ERP solution, say moving an on-premise solution to moving to the cloud. Fundamentally, that's a huge transformation effort. Great. We found over time, you cannot underestimate the importance of the end-to-end change management program and all the elements involved. I think, Yoana, you hit upon something. We are human beings, and each individual is different in the way that they respond to the dynamics around them. Some embrace change. Just by nature, our DNA says, I love change. I'm the first person to grab the new technology, or I want to constantly try new and different things. The other end of the continuum are people who just repel change. Anything different in their life is very challenging for them. They might be the people who have the same shirts in the closet or do the same 21 steps every single day. Now you're asking them to change their routines. We need to come and meet them on a common ground. So in terms of a comprehensive change management program, you really have to do a comprehensive stakeholder assessment up front in any initiative to meet people where they are and provide the mechanisms, that path, that roadmap, that journey, because journeys will look very, very different for different associates in different roles in the organization. You can't underestimate the importance of doing all that. Some of the other dynamics then is being very, very intentional at the start of any initiative. And we like to use the term North Star or guiding principles or overarching goals and objectives. That's what the CFO and that's what the executive leadership team needs to drive home. Need to get the organization, one, to embrace it at that, say, 20,000 foot strategic level, but then cascade it down throughout the organization such that every individual, wherever they are, can internalize, this is why we're going where we're going. Here is how we're going to get there. Here is your individual role in that journey. And then at the end of the day, what does it mean for me? I'm the person doing a particular job and I did it a certain way before. It's going to be done differently now. Help them embrace, help them along the journey, eliminate roadblocks, everything that you can do, reinforce that, but never lose sight of that North Star. That's so important for the organization. Keep coming back to it. It guides decisions. It guides your change management programs. It guides your ability to measure success. That's just so critical at the end of the day to achieve what you were looking to do as part of these broad digital transformation efforts.
Thank you, Philip. Yes, change is always inevitable, right? And as we think about changing and as we look into the future, are there any, question back to you, Philip, are there any metrics or KPIs that you're taking account of to see how do we measure that value back into our business?
Yeah, there's a number of different quantitative, certainly metrics, because when we talk about things like return on investment or net present value or whatever measurement we're using, we do have to support the significant investments of people, resources, and certainly dollars and cents when we do that. So there's a number that typically we help organizations, number one, set out that North Star, if you will, or how are we going to measure things? So it could be elements like cycle time reduction. Say, for instance, you're on a digital transformation initiative where you say, I want to reduce my close and consolidation cycle time from 13 days to 4 days. That's a pretty dramatic improvement, but that's very measurable. It's very quantifiable, and you'll keep coming back to something like that. Cycle time is pervasive everywhere. That could be processing invoices. That could be cycle time to produce a financial forecast. That could be cycle time to producing annual planning. churn out the management reports, churn out the 10Q, 10K. That's a pretty important one. Others would be something like level of effort. So at the start of an initiative, baseline yourself on how many people, how long, what does it take to accomplish whatever those activities are, then say we're looking for a 40% reduction in that. So sheer level of effort. You're not necessarily saying, quote, we're going to have a target of cost reduction. That's typically a byproduct. I'd like to think you can redeploy resources and move them over to more value-added things versus necessarily reducing resources, but it's a level of effort aspect. Certain elements are other measurements, cost avoidance. Like organizations, the whole term of technology debt left in our old environments where our technology investments supported an organization at a point in time, back to the whole change element, the world is dynamic. Organizations are constantly evolving. It's very, very hard to keep pace with all the tools and technology and applications and structures and data repositories to keep up with how the organization changes. You end up with a lot of technology debt. So you can measure by moving to the digital transformation initiatives that require investments, you're having a significant amount of cost avoidance, be it upgrades, be it replacements, something as simple as the server was old in an on-premise environment. We no longer need it in a digital cloud-based solution. So there's a big aspect about cost avoidance. A couple other ones that I think are more oriented towards the value creation is things like the quality and accuracy of planning and forecasting. So by moving and embracing digitally enabled capabilities, be it driver-based planning and modeling, be it predictive analytics, be some of the more advanced things that are getting infused and increasingly adopted by finance and FP&A and the broader community, you're having higher quality estimates and plans. Presumably that leads to more accurate results, again, more of a byproduct, but it also accelerates your ability to get to the answer. So instead of spending weeks and weeks and weeks developing a forecast, you do it in days. You accelerate your ability to hit that point and then make decisions, take action, course correct, drive the business. So those are things that are measurable. And you can say, it used to take us, again, back to cycle time, 10 days, now it takes us a day. And the executive leadership team can then react. The last one I love to speak to because it's a little bit more difficult to measure, but the degree of business partnering. Now you free up time for people to go out into the business and help make better decisions, raise their financial aptitude and acumen, but you can measure degree to which your finance organization is being a business partner.
Excellent. Yeah, those are quite a few KPIs that you already have in mind. I definitely, whenever I come across organizations, those are the things that I'm talking to about organizations, reducing cycle times being, top of mind. And there could be, 20, 30, 40 KPIs that each AP or finance department measures. So,
right.
So Yoana, same question to you. Are there some KPIs that you are currently measuring or looking forward to measuring that you're not capturing today?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I have a slightly different answer, and it's coming from the transformation office perspective that complements perfectly what the finance function does. But as part of the transformation office, this office is, overseeing the entire, in my case, North America, but could be the whole organization. And there's a lot of efforts going on in the organization, efforts that we can quantify above 10 million, or if you're a smaller company, above 100,000, that we approve. But then the question is, what is the value that we extract? And the business case is one thing, but then, a year into the project, 2 years, 5 years, that business case needs to be continuously reevaluated and relooked at with hopefully the same lens or different lenses, but in order to really understand, did it deliver the value that it promised? And I started by saying that we look at the whole organization. So for me, when I think about KPIs in this case from the transformation office, I'm not thinking only of the KPIs of the finance department, but I'm thinking across the business. So in order to do that, we put them in 5 buckets. We call it a pentagon. So the Pentagon that we look at when it comes to KPIs are around first P&L impact, but it doesn't have to be first. I started it because it's the closest to my heart, but it doesn't have to be first, right? So when we talk about the P&L impact, could be KPIs that we look at there, such as gross revenue, growth year over year, net sales impact, COGS reduction, such as the gross margin change, SG&A cost reduction. We look at what is the conversion rate, repurchase rate, cost per action, and these are just a few of them. Of course, when it comes to the finance, we can also look, at your cash conversion cycle, or you look at, the healthiness of your balance sheet, but these are much more finance focused. In this case, I'm talking about the whole organization. How do we measure KPIs across the organization? So another second bucket of the Pentagon, right? The first one, I would say, I said P&L impact. The second one is customer centricity. And I can give you the 5 of them, and then we can go into some more KPIs. The third one is tech and data leadership. The fourth one would be agility and employee centricity. And the fifth one is sustainability. Under this, I would also put everything that goes around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So going back to the second bucket that I said, customer centricity, some of the KPIs here you could monitor is customer net promoting score, number of mentions of your brand online, pretty much what is your brand equity score, also return rate for the products, for the brand, by the brand level, on-site versus offline brick and mortar, and so on. The third one is tech and data leadership. And here could be anything around, I talked earlier about security breaches. So how many cyber attacks did you have? How many you're able to stop? What was the impact? How many alerts you have around safety, and so on. When it comes to agility and employee centricity, some of the KPIs that are important at L'Oréal are what we have. It's a pulse. We call it pulse, survey. This is a survey that we do every 3 months. It's very intense. It's around employee enablement, management skills. So every 3 months, you reevaluate, did what I implemented in my actions made a difference in the last 3 months, or did it not? And this has been really critical for L'Oréal to turn around their score for employee centricity and agility. Here will be also another KPIs, employee turnover, reason why employees left, very important, those interviews at the end. Also, how many, incidents you had in the company, could be, safety incidents in the factory, or any kind of, employee disengagement, incidents that you noticed. When it comes to sustainability, I mentioned already scores around diversity, inclusion, but also anything around, emission of gases, water consumption, electricity consumption, and so on. So this is how I would like to, look at KPIs across the organization. This is a list that is probably the most important KPIs, but it's not exhaustive. We have a library of at least 300. We put this, this forward as the most important, but we encourage the business when they bring a project in front of the transformation office to think of, what are the top 3 KPIs they want to measure. We look at measurable metrics. What does that mean? It means that I have to be able to measure it in a way that has the least, outside factor impact, and in a way that it's easy to translate to the business, but also in a way that it's easy to do 3 years from now, 5 years from now, right? It's a lot of changes happen. So if you can find KPIs that are very easy to measure and not complex, those KPIs would be easier to really isolate and measure in the future as well.
And I love that concept of the Pentagon, right? You're not just focused in on the finance department, you're really looking at it holistically throughout the organization, which is what every organization really needs to do. So thank you for that response. So on our final note, let's talk about the future. So Philip, how do you predict technology will change your department, finance department, let's say in the next 3 years? What are your thoughts on that?
I love always love this type of question, but increasingly so. I happen to be. I take my magic 8-ball. I take the rub the secret thing and put something on my hat and predict the future. I was literally on a call with a client this morning, and this person said, "Philip, how much do you know about Chat GPT? How much do you know about Microsoft Copilot?" And I said, "Not nearly enough, because it's here. I need to try it. I need to embrace it." So those elements, the wave of technology, it's one thing to say we're going to accelerate our adoption of AI and machine learning. And of course, that would be one of the predictions that I would make. But things that seemed far away, they're not. If we're able to speak to something and produce a tome of a report, or ask Microsoft to build a 3-statement financial model, hypothetically, I haven't tried it yet, but I'd love to. Embracing these technology changes, they're here. This is going to fundamentally change what we do, how we do it, when we do it, with all the considerations that come in with it. Broadly speaking, things like whether it's AI, machine learning, predictive analytics, and so forth, increasingly organizations will be driving and continue to invest in these types of capabilities. The foundational building blocks of digital transformation, say moving to cloud-based ERP, supply chain management, human capital management, advanced planning, reporting, analytics solutions, those are foundational to the digital transformation wave, and organizations will continue to adopt them. I think in conjunction with that, there's going to be elements that are data-centric, so focusing on enterprise master data. Underneath our world, it's data. And we talked about data democratization, but all the different elements of the quality of data, the access of data, the governance of data, the usage of data, the ingestion of data, the taxonomy around data. There are technology capabilities that organizations will increasingly embrace over the next 3 years to make data the water, make data the completely invaluable asset. I think then weaving back into with now that we have it, what do we do with it? Leveraging, be it AI, be it machine learning, be it predictive analytics, to continue to explore and take advantage of the unknown and the art of possible that we don't even know about. Back to my conversation with the client, they happen to be consumer products with a vast supply chain. And he was telling me, "Hey, Philip, I want to be able to look at variables, look at considerations that I wasn't thinking of. What's going to drive consumption of hair dryers based on an influencer on TikTok who suddenly said, this is the new hairstyle? How do I factor that into my forward-looking plans that impact my supply chain, that impact my inventory needs, that impact ordering from Amazon?" And I told him, Brad, I said, "Well, Brad, that's a good one. Let me start working on it."
Absolutely. And Yoana, same question to you. I love this question because it's so loaded, right? You don't know where it's going to go. There's so many influencers out there in the world. Just yesterday, I was watching the CEO of TikTok in front of the House, in front of the Senate, talking about data and the integrity and where that's going. So right up the alley, Steve. So Yoana, if I could ask you that same question, where do you see finance and in a whole, where are we going in the next 3 years?
Yes, actually, I love Philip. Example about how do I look at my supply chain when everything is changing so fast and so unexpected. And the TikTok influencer brought back some memories, and I'm not going to give the name of the company to kind of protect the innocence of the finance department in that company. But I remember coming to work and being told that we are completely out of stock because, we sold, it was probably like 20 million worth of product in one weekend that we didn't expect. And we didn't know why. And that was the worst thing ever, not to know why, right? So a week into this crisis of trying to source product, and bring it over from overseas, an intern in our department says, hey, did you see this influencer on TikTok? They made a video about our brand. And that's when we connected the dots. That influencer had like 40 million people or something like that. And it just completely put us in out of stock over the weekend. So these problems are here, are happening today. And I think there are still questions that we try to get about how do we stay agile, nimble, flexible enough so that we can drive, the most value from our business, and we are prepared for the changes to come. So with that, I believe, and again, nobody knows, but, we are continuing to moving from a traditional operating model to what I like to call being part of the transformation office, right? To an agile value creation model. We drive from the transformation office with value creation in mind, value realization, value measuring. And the way you pointed earlier, right, value is not necessarily in a finance project. And I actually had a pause when an HR team came to me, and on their scorecard where they listed the top 3 KPIs that we talked about earlier, the first one was savings from, employee optimization model. And for me, that would have been probably the last on the list, and I'm finance, and I have to turn the table and say, wait, you are HR, you're doing this project, not necessarily only for the for the savings, for the cost savings, because we deal with organizational change. We are talking about shared services here, right? So moving people from what they know today into a shared service department. So it's not only about the value creation that's extracted from this, from reducing the amount of workforce that you have, but also from optimizing the work. But it's also, in this case, for me, was, do we think we can have more subject experts, available? Do we feel like people, would feel a sense of ownership and much more engagement now that they're subject matter experts? So for me, these are some of the KPIs that I would have liked to see, so how we drive change again, and how technology will change the finance department again will get us into much more value creation focus and mindset. When it comes to that, I think finance will become more of a one-stop shop. And I like to say that finance is not a business partner. Many times I heard support partner. I cannot even stand it. We are not a business partner. Finance is the business. We are in the middle of, the tornado ice storm, and we have to stay there and, be able to help the CEO and the presidents of divisions, coordinate all the efforts, be able to focus on the strategy, on the execution, because we enable for them, the data availability, reporting, and everything they need for fast decision making. I talked about the cross-pollination of the, finance professionals as well, between IT, digital, and finance. And I saw there's also a negative connotation to this, technology kind of stepping into our departments. I say that because I've seen that a lot of people now are thinking about, will my job be cut because of much more automatization? And McKinsey actually predicted that 30% of the hours worked globally may be completely wiped out by 2030 because of this automatization of work. So yes, that is a concern. But there is a human aspect that you alluded earlier to, that they cannot be replaced by machines. And that is, that ability to look beyond the data that the machine won't be able to do. The ability to adjust projections and put real assumptions into your data projection that the machine cannot fully do. That ability to listen to your gut instinct, or to say, I've been through this situation before, and in the middle of the change, is not the fact that we are on time, in budget, with the milestones that matter the most. What mattered the most were people brought along into the change process. Were they following? Were they having the same vision? And that's what at the end of the day cannot be replaced by machines. So at the end, to kind of sum it up and to put it bluntly, experience, I don't think it's as valuable as used to be. I think ability to change and acquire new skills and adapt, yes, your job may be, replaced by a machine, but there's a lot of, new jobs that are created, this merger of finance and technology and digital, and new skills to be acquired that you could step into. And this kind of brings me back to what I started with, the mainframe and the main computers. And there's this memory comes back that, IT professionals that were very good at working on the mainframe, which was very, very, very difficult, found themselves completely obsolete when the new, Windows computer came up, and you have an emergence of young kids graduating from universities and being very good at C++. And all this experience and the skills that the COBOL programmers on the mainframe, had were completely obsolete. So at that point, they had two options, either saying my job is being replaced or it doesn't exist anymore, or learn new skills, adapt to change, and pivot into the new era, of computer languages and the technology and computers. And only those are the ones that survived. And the same thing with finance. We just have to continuously change and pivot and adapt, learn in order to survive in the future. But also, to your point, if I have to look into the future, what I see.
Well, thank you so much. And, thank you for your valuable insights, both Philip and Yoana. It kind of really brings us towards the end of our discussion here. And there's some questions coming in. We're a little bit short on time. I think this question is really right up your alley here, Yoana. A question came in, it says, change is unsettling. As the finance department transitions from an intensive approach to data-driven model, how do I keep employees engaged and excited about the future? And how do I encourage them to embrace this change? I think you mentioned this quite a bit earlier. Would love to get your thoughts on this.
Yes, of course. I am very passionate about this, and I don't think people know because I don't think it's on my LinkedIn yet, but I'm studying psychology. I'm doing a master's in psychology at Harvard, and the reason is because I realized that in order to be a good leader, the skills of finance or, management are not enough. I think what's needed more is the ability to really understand behavior, to understand organizational behavior, and not only, people behavior, organizational change, and adaptability to the organization culture. And that boils down to the person, the individual, right? Two people showing up to work, it's diversity already, right? So it's really understanding the individual. And that's where the change can happen, when you're able to, have a compelling story, a story that you can translate to people from the point of why do I care about it? What does it mean to me? And that could be the compelling story. Like, people may care about, more about the shareholders, the company, the reputation. They may be caring about, the customers, or they, what does it mean to me, my own development, my paycheck, my bonus. What does it mean to, the society we live in? A lot of questions today, around ethics, around ability to do business in a way that it doesn't impact the environment. So all this boils down to what does it mean to me? And if you can tell the story from that perspective of each individual, what does it mean to you specifically? I think then you have a very compelling change story. And this kind of makes me smile because I heard the story of Moses, right? If you remember from the Bible, he's trying to take a large amount of people over the water. And he just had a story, a compelling story. We are going to go to the free land. And he kept going at it because the Pharaoh in the beginning did not, allow him to. And then he kept telling the people about the vision, and nobody cared or stopped to ask, wait, there's actually an ocean, a Red Sea in between us, right? How do we even get there? And how long will it take? It took 40 years in the end. So the idea of having this compelling story that you can tell every single person from their perspective of what does it mean to me, then you have people buying into it. Being a role model, of course, it's part of the change and driving change, involving people in the change process early on. Again, I talked about change is very difficult. People need to be brought along every step of the way, and let them write their own story with what they observe. and let them process change. Again, change is very destabilizing time, because what we knew today is not here anymore, and where we are going to go is not very clear, right? So people process change at different rates. Also, is the organization ready for change? It's another big question that we need to look at. So I kind of talked about it from a people's perspective, but do we have the right tools in place to embrace, to move into the next level, right? To embrace the change? Do we have the right processes in order to drive the change, in order to make sure that the change stays? A lot of the times throughout the change, you see people getting what I call change fatigue. So, and then they want to just land the airplane on a flat land and that's it, right? And then the organization gets stuck into this project that started. It's completely overwhelming. People are, fatigued about the whole effort, and nobody seems to be able to get out and move it forward. So being able to take the pulse of the organization and make sure that you have the processes, the tools in place, it's very important. One last thing to mention is the communication throughout the change process, right? And the communication used to be email blasting and, on different screens that will flash on your computer. But it's much more today with this, digital immersion that we talked about. You have social groups today, and these social groups could be very effective in order to use them to communicate the change, to get feedback about the change, to feel, where the employee's mindset is, to be able to build empathy, share your purpose, share the vision, the strategy, and also personalize the experience, because you have different support groups. I call them support groups, social support groups, but could be, a women's leader organization. No, it doesn't have to be necessarily a support group, but these groups that are activated throughout the organization and using digital could be super important in order to drive home the change story and to be able to get the airplane, to the landing point, and not only to anything that looks flat and we are in the, change fatigue zone and we just want to land the airplane.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. One last question, and this one I think for Philip. Question came in: how can I ensure that existing employees acquire the skills needed to support my digital journey?
So from a skills perspective, we have certainly seen this with many of our clients, specifically ones who are a bit more progressive. They step back first and foremost and define, as a finance organization, the skills they have today, the desired skills that a digitally transformed, digitally enabled, modern finance organization need to have, and then baseline and assess where all of their associates are today vis-a-vis where they need to be. That's really the anchoring point, is that baseline assessment to say, presumably, there's likely to be some gaps. With the gaps in mind and with the North Star, if you will, or the end state in mind, defining what those types of skills, what those types of capabilities need to be, developing training curriculums, whether internally, externally, or some combination of how do you augment what you don't have to then provide the training and education to those associates over time. It's typically an ecosystem of elements that come into the training world. I think, Yoana, you highlighted in one of your comments, there's an element that's very experiential, things that we learn over time as finance associates, as practitioners, as people in this space. A lot of it is based on experience. And while experience in and of itself may be slightly less valuable than it once was, you have to go through the school of hard knocks to learn many things such that you gain these skills. Specifically, some of the more essential non-technical skills are not even like financial textbook type of skills, but the ability to work with people and negotiate and do those types of things. The skills then, a combination of, there's various types of training organizations. Something like LinkedIn provides a wide array of different types of training capabilities, all of the online training. Today, things are at people's fingertips. One can ask questions, as they should, and be very intentional on the quality of the different types of training available, but really establishing the intentional plan, aligning that to the individuals, aligning that to the master. This is what we want in our finance organization over time, connect those dots, and then make the commitment as an organization. Training is essential. Training is exceedingly important. That has to be part and parcel to performance management plans. I know, even speaking in my organization, a consulting organization, we have essentially mandatory, in a good way, types of training. Some of that is a byproduct of, be it DEI training or be it cybersecurity training and things, but we have constant certifications and different types of training for us to get upskilled in a digital way.
Well, Philip and Yoana, thank you so much for your valuable insights. It was a great discussion. That is unfortunately all the time we have today. I want to say a big thank you not only to our speakers, but also CFO Dive, as well as TradeShift, for making this webinar possible. And of course, our audience for joining us. As a reminder, this webinar will be available on demand, and the link will be sent to you very shortly. We'd love to connect with you and answer any other questions that we may not have gotten to, and schedule a meeting to discuss what your specific needs are and how we can help. You can contact us at tradeshift.com or click on the link in the chat, and we'd be happy to assist. Thank you so much, and have a great, great day. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.